Okay, so this is a little reminder of what we did in the class this evening. So you start off by making a slip knot so that you've got one loop on your hook to start you off. So I take the yarn right over left to make a loop, and then I take that same loop and cross it over to the left hand side over the working yarn that goes to the ball, and then I pick up that bar in the middle with my hook like that, lift that up, and if I grab hold of both strands and pull, I end up with the knot. So you want that to be quite tight, and then if you pull on the working yarn that goes to the ball and hold on to the knot, you'll be able to adjust the size of your loop. Now you want there to be enough room to move and wiggle about in that loop. So we're going to begin with, to do working in rows, we're going to begin with a chain, and the number of chains that you do, obviously a pattern will tell you what you require, but essentially you just keep working until you've got the width of your desired finished object. So if you were making a cushion, then you would just keep on chaining until you reach the width that you're looking for, and then you can start stitching back the other way. So we're going to set up our hold with our left hand. So either we're wrapping the yarn around our fingers, little finger like that, over your index finger, so your index finger's pointing up and creating a sort of slope here, and then your thumb and middle finger, their job is to hold on to the knot. That's one way of doing it. Alternatively, you can just put the yarn over your hands and grip that with your little finger, which means that every time you want to allow a bit more yarn through, you just literally lift your little finger and pull the yarn so that a little bit more comes through. That can get a bit intensive on your fingers. That can be a bit uncomfortable. So that wrapping around would make that a little bit easier. The alternative way is to go basically over your ring finger, under your middle finger, and then over your index finger like that. So your middle finger and thumb are still available to hold on to the knot, and you've still got that shape there, and then you just have to sort of open your fingers a little bit to allow the yarn to pull through. Okay, so you have to find what's the most comfortable for you. And again, holding your hook, you either hold it like that with your thumb down on the hooked side of the hook, or you hold it a bit like a knife like that, or you hold it a bit like a pencil. So you decide and play around with those and see which one works, and then we're ready. So we want our left hand nice and strong holding onto the yarn, and we want the right hand free to move and make stitches. We're going to go underneath and grab the yarn. As we do want to just loosen a little bit so that you can allow that yarn to freely move, and then you're going to bring it back and pull it through the loop that's already on your hook, and that is one chain. Okay, and you may have to reset your hand again for the next one. So you want to move your fingers up from the knot on the end there, move them up onto that chain you just made so that everything's nice and strong. And you dive underneath, grab the yarn, and as you grab the yarn, give it a twist, give your hook a twist downwards like that to really leverage the hooked end so it really grabs the yarn, you don't lose it on the way through. And you may find that pulling on the top of the chain, so pulling that away from the hook, can you see I'm pulling in opposite directions with my hands, creates more of a gap there, a bit more space to pull the hook back through. Okay, I'll do one more. Okay, so now that we've got to the end of the chain, we're actually going to work from right to left, so back all the way back to where the knot is right at the beginning. And we've got all of these holes of our chain, and that's where we're going to be putting all of our stitches, our double crochet stitches, which is what we learnt tonight. So if you have a look at the end, your loop that is on your hook is emerging from the chain before it. Okay, so we're not going to go into that chain to make a stitch because it's already occupied, it's busy, it's got that loop coming out of it. So we're going to skip over that. We're going to move on to the next one along, the next empty chain. And to make a double crochet, you go into the stitch, grab the yarn at the back and pull it through, keeping your finger and thumb nice and close to where the hook is. Okay, and you can pull this yarn up a little bit to give you a little bit more wiggle room on the hook, so you've got a nice gap under both of those loops. Because to finish the stitch, we're going to grab the yarn and pull it back through both loops like that. So that's a completed double crochet, and then we move on to the next loop along, next empty chain. We go in there, grab the yarn and pull it through so that you have 2 loops on the hook. Again, this is the best time to adjust the height of the loops to give you enough space to grab and pull back through. And then you continue along. Keep repositioning your thumb and middle finger to really get control of your work underneath, because you don't want to lose your grip on that. And then you're going to come along until you get to the last chain. So you ignore your knot on the end and you're going into the last chain. Pull your yarn up, finish your stitch. So we've come to the end of that row now. Now, in order to turn and travel back along this way, we need the direction of travel to be actually going from right to left. So in order to do that, we're going to create what's called a turning chain, which is literally just grabbing the yarn and pulling it through the loop on your hook. Okay, and when you've done that, you can now take your work and flip it under. Okay, so it's facing the other way. Now we're no longer working into the chain, we're working into the last row of double crochet stitches that we've just made. So to identify where you need to go, you're going to turn it on its end like that. Just I want you to see that the top of a double crochet looks like a chain, looks like V shapes. Okay, and where we're actually going to be working is into the first hole under that double crochet stitch. So there's the top of the double crochet, that V, and we're going in under both sides, both loops of that stitch. Some patterns might say work into the front loop only, or work into the back loop only. But what we're doing, a standard double crochet, we're going to work under both loops of the stitch. Okay, so you go underneath, you grab your yarn, so you have your 2 loops, and you complete your stitch pulling the yarn through both loops. Then you move along to the next one, Okay, find the next hole. If in doubt, check where the V-shaped stitch is, and directly underneath it is where you want to go. And you might have noticed this loop that I pull through is long in comparison to this one. That's absolutely fine. Essentially what you want is that when you've got your hook lying parallel to your work in a nice horizontal line, that these two loops are the same, as in you haven't got one much taller that way or that way. You result in a nice horizontal hook like that, even if the length of this loop is long here in comparison to this one. So now you grab your yarn and pull it through both. And we move along to the next one. So you find your next hole to go into, grab your yarn and pull it up. And then you look for the last one. Sometimes it looks like it's sloping off a little bit. So it's easy to, especially if you're working in smaller yarn, you can miss that last one. It's harder to miss when it's massive like this. Okay, so you've come to the end, and just as we did before, if you were turning at this point, you would do one chain and then you would flip your work under to start traveling along there, and again working into those stitch spaces. Okay, so underneath those two bars of each double crochet that you've just done. If on the other hand you have actually finished your work and you want to just fasten off, you're basically going to cut your yarn, and with giant yarn like this you can just literally take the end and feed it through the last loop and pull it tight. Or if you're working with skinnier yarn and it's a bit more fiddly, you just, as you were doing before, you're just grabbing the yarn, pulling it through the last stitch, but all the way through, and then just pull tight and it will fasten. And then your job is to hide the ends. Basically, you don't need to weave in the entire length of this. I would say maybe weave in about 1.5 inches of it, something like that. Essentially it's just to hide it, because otherwise you'll just have a little snippet of yarn sticking out, looking messy. And if you've got let's see if I can find one. Here we go. If you're using normal knitting wool, you might want to use something like this. It's a plastic darning needle. You would just thread, in fact it probably would work for this actually. Yeah, just about. So you thread your yarn through there, and then you're just going to use this to essentially weave. And I'm not going in any particular direction. I'm going where I think it's going to be least conspicuous. Just going under the loops that I see in front of me. And then when I've been under a few, I just snip it nice and close to the little loop that it's emerging from. And you'll see if I just stretch the work a little bit and just, it's disappeared. It's kind of been sucked in underneath that last loop that I went into, so it's disappeared, it's gone. And then you do exactly the same with this side. The alternative, instead of using a darning needle like that, is to use a smaller hook, and then you just basically go underneath the one you want to pull it through, and a bit like crochet, the actual crochet process, you're pulling the yarn underneath and through. So you reach through, grab it and pull it. It's just helping it along basically without being too fiddly. There you go. And then you're going to snip nice and close. Can you see how close I've snipped it to the last loop? And then if you pull, just pull your work around a little bit, it kind of sucks it in and hides that end. You can't see it. And there we have it. So that's 2 rows of double crochet, and you can obviously start off as wide as you like and continue as long as you like. You could make scarves, blankets, placemats, rugs. You are literally equipped now to make anything rectangular. So hopefully you have enjoyed crochet, and I hope it becomes something that becomes part of your life from now on. It is literally one of my most loved hobbies ever. Let me know how you get on. Take care.